Imagine a powerful CEO, keys in hand, about to step into his sleek BMW, when a child's voice stops him dead in his tracks. A 7-year-old girl, hiding in his car, tells him to shut up. Why? Because his empire is about to crumble, and she's the only one who knows the truth. Welcome to Whisper Fable, where the smallest voices can change everything. A millionaire CEO gets into his car, and here's a 7-year-old black girl telling him to shut up. He could never have imagined why. Shut up, and don't say a word. The high-pitched voice cut through the silence of the parking lot like a knife. Jonathan Miller, CEO of Miller Industries, froze with the key in his hand, still outside his black BMW. The order had come from inside the car itself. His eyes adjusted to the dim interior, and he saw a black girl of about 7 huddled in the back seat, her eyes wide with fear. "They're listening," she whispered, pointing discreetly to the corporate building behind him. "Your partner and his blonde wife. They said you be here now." What would you do if a child revealed a betrayal that could destroy everything you've built? Stay with Whisper Fable, because this story of trust and treachery is just beginning. Jonathan was 52 years old and had never imagined that his life would change because of a street child. He had founded Miller Industries from scratch, turning it into a technology company valued at $200 million. He had trusted his partner Marcus Williams completely for 15 years, and his executive assistant Diana Foster for a decade. "How did you get into my car?" he asked quietly, sliding into the driver's seat without making any sudden movements. "The cleaning lady left it open when she left. I hid because I saw them talking about you upstairs." Her small eyes sparkled with an intelligence that contrasted with her dirty clothes. "They said that tomorrow you won't be the owner of anything anymore." Jonathan's blood ran cold. Tomorrow was the meeting with Japanese investors for a $400 million merger. A meeting that Marcus and Diana had meticulously organized. "What else did you hear?" he asked, pretending to fiddle with his cell phone while watching the illuminated windows of the 10th floor. "That you're very stupid, and you're going to sign some papers without reading them properly." The blonde woman laughed and said that the day after tomorrow, you'll have to look for another job. The girl shrank further. "They said other nasty things about you, but my grandmother always said that children don't repeat bad words." Jonathan felt a mixture of anger and something surprisingly close to pride. This child had risked her own safety to warn a complete stranger about a betrayal. "What's your name?" "Jasmine." "And yours is Jonathan Miller because I heard them say it 1,000 times." She hesitated. "Are you going to turn me in to the police now?" For the first time in weeks, Jonathan smiled genuinely. "No, Jasmine. In fact, you may have saved everything I've built in my life." Through the rearview mirror, he saw the office lights going out one by one. Marcus and Diana were probably coming down now, confident that tomorrow would be the day they finally got Jonathan out of the way. What they didn't know was that a millionaire CEO had just found the most unlikely ally possible. And that Jasmine, without knowing it, had given him something far more valuable than any business meeting: time to prepare. As he drove away from the building, Jonathan was already beginning to formulate a plan. But why would a 7-year-old risk everything to save a man she didn't even know? The answer to that question would change not only his revenge, but his entire perspective on justice. If this story of betrayal and revenge touched you, be sure to subscribe to Whisper Fable to find out how the person they underestimated the most would become the perfect instrument of their own downfall. Jonathan drove through the quiet streets of the city, his brain processing Jasmine's words like pieces of a puzzle that were finally starting to fit together. In the back seat, the girl remained alert, her eyes fixed on the rearview mirrors. "Did they say anything else?" she asked, keeping her voice low. The blonde woman said, "You trust them like an obedient little dog." Jasmine grimaced in disgust. "And that tomorrow you'll find out that little dogs sometimes bite their owners." The casual cruelty of that sentence hit Jonathan like a punch in the stomach. 15 years of partnership, 10 years of absolute trust in Diana, and they saw him as a foolish pet. "Where do you live, Jasmine?" "Nowhere in particular." She shrugged with a naturalness that broke his heart. "Sometimes at the shelter, sometimes on the street. It depends if there's room or if the other boys aren't being too annoying." Jonathan stopped at a traffic light and turned to look at her directly. "Why did you tell me? You don't even know me." Jasmine's eyes flashed with premature wisdom. "Because I know what it's like when people think you're invisible. They were talking about you like you're stupid, like you're nothing." Her voice grew firmer. "My grandma always said, when you see someone getting stepped on and you can help, you help, because next time it could be you." The light turned green, but Jonathan remained still for a few seconds, absorbing the lesson in humanity he had just received from a 7-year-old. 20 minutes later, they were sitting in an empty diner, Jasmine devouring a hamburger while Jonathan pretended to drink his cold coffee. His cell phone vibrated. A message from Marcus. "You ready for tomorrow, buddy? The Japanese are going to love our proposal. You're going to retire rich." Jonathan showed the screen to Jasmine, who laughed softly. "He's got some nerve, doesn't he? He's lying to your face and still putting on a happy face. Marcus has always been like that. Charming, convincing." Jonathan typed a friendly reply, masking the anger boiling inside him. "Diana, too. She knows my schedule better than I do. She has access to everything in the company, and you're going to let them fool you tomorrow." Jonathan smiled genuinely for the first time. "No, Jasmine, but they can't know that I know." Another message arrived, this time from Diana. "Jonathan, I've reviewed the final contracts. Everything is perfect for signing. Trust me as you always have." The coldness of that message, disguised as affection, made Jonathan's stomach churn. For 10 years, Diana had been his confidant, the person who organized his life, who knew his schedule, his passwords, his fears. "Do they know things about you?" he asked Jasmine, licking her ketchup-stained fingers. "They know everything. Bank passwords, company accounts, where I keep important documents." The magnitude of the betrayal was beginning to sink in. "They've had years to prepare. But you've had years of stuff on them, too, right?" Jonathan stopped with a glass halfway to his lips. Jasmine was right. 15 years of partnership, 10 years of executive assistance. He knew their secrets as well as they knew his. Marcus' secret meetings with competitors that he thought no one knew about. The irregular bonus system Diana had created for herself. The emails he had seen by accident. The conversations he had overheard when they thought he wasn't paying attention. "You have a very sharp mind, Jasmine. My grandmother used to say that when you have nothing, you learn to pay attention to everything." She wiped her hands on her napkin. "They think you're stupid, but you're not, are you?" Jonathan smiled, feeling something he hadn't felt in years, hope mixed with determination. "No, I'm not." His cell phone rang. Marcus, no doubt wanting to confirm some last-minute detail, consolidate the final trap. Jonathan answered in the friendliest voice he could muster. "Jonathan, I'm glad you got there. Diana and I are here finishing up the last preparations. Are you resting well? Tomorrow will be a big day." "I'm great, Marcus. I can't wait to see how it all unfolds. It'll be perfect. Trust me, we've taken care of everything. All you have to do is show up and sign where Diana tells you." The arrogance in Marcus' voice was almost palpable. They really thought they had reduced Jonathan to a puppet who would simply follow the script. After he hung up, Jasmine watched him closely. "You're planning something, aren't you?" Your eyes look different. Every word of contempt, every lie disguised as concern, every fake smile from the last few months began to make sense. Marcus and Diana hadn't just betrayed his trust. They had completely underestimated his ability to fight back. What those two didn't know was that years of building businesses had taught Jonathan a fundamental lesson. The best strategies aren't loud, they're silent. And while they prematurely celebrated their victory, he was about to turn their arrogance into the very trap that would destroy them. The next morning, Jonathan woke up with a clarity of mind he hadn't felt in months. Jasmine was sleeping on the living room couch, wrapped in a blanket he had found in the closet. For a moment, he watched the child who had completely changed the course of his life in a single night. His cell phone vibrated. A message from Diana at 6:15 a.m. "A good morning, boss. I've been at the office since 5 o'clock, getting everything ready. The Japanese are arriving at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. You just need to trust me and sign where I tell you, as always." Jonathan smiled bitterly. The same Diana who worked extra to ensure he lost everything was pretending to be a devoted mother. "You're planning something," said Jasmine, stretching out on the sofa. "Your eyes are different. Like when my grandmother found out someone was lying to her." "I need your help, Jasmine. Could you go back there today and listen to more of their conversations?" The girl sat up, suddenly serious. "That's dangerous." "I know. That's why I'm going to pay someone to protect you." Jonathan had already made up his mind during his sleepless night. "I know a private investigator, Gabriel Torres. He used to work for me checking backgrounds on big clients." Gabriel answered on the second ring, his voice thick and familiar. "Jonathan, what a surprise. I thought you'd forgotten about me after they terminated my contract last year." The irony did not escape him. Gabriel had been let go by Marcus and Diana, who claimed budget cuts. Now Jonathan understood the real reason. Gabriel was too smart and asked too many questions. "Gabriel, I need you to know that your dismissal was not my decision." Silence on the other end. Then a low, dry laugh. "I figured as much." Marcus never liked investigators asking inconvenient questions. "What do you need?" 2 hours later, Gabriel was sitting in Jonathan's kitchen, looking at Jasmine with a mixture of admiration and concern. He was a 45-year-old man, a former police officer, with scars on his hands and eyes that missed nothing. So, this little detective uncovered a $200 million corporate conspiracy. Gabriel shook his head in awe. "Jasmine, you have a natural talent for this." "My grandmother always said that when you have nothing, you learn to listen to everything," as she replied, biting off a piece of toast. Gabriel pulled a tablet out of his backpack. "Jonathan, while Jasmine was saving your company, I was investigating a few things on my own. I never liked how I was fired." His fingers slid across the screen, revealing spreadsheets and documents. Marcus and Diana aren't just traitors, they're thieves. The evidence was devastating. Suspicious transfers, fake contracts, clients that existed only on paper. For 2 years, they had siphoned more than $5 million from the company, creating a complex network of shell companies. "The merger with the Japanese isn't about growth," Gabriel explained. "It's about money laundering. They need you to sign to validate the retroactive transfers. After that, they remove you, and everything is clean." Jonathan felt a cold anger rising in his chest. "They stole from the company I built with my own hands," he muttered. They used my trust to finance their own corruption. Jasmine leaned forward. Now it gets interesting. They think you're stupid, but you have an investigator and a smart girl on your side, and they don't know any of this. Jonathan's cell phone rang. Marcus, of course. Partner, I hope you slept well. Diana and I have been here since early this morning, finalizing the last details. The Japanese are going to be impressed with our organization. I'm sure they will, Jonathan replied, his voice carefully neutral. One more thing, Marcus continued, and Jonathan could hear the predatory smile in his voice. Diana suggested that you don't need to worry about reviewing the documents today. They're quite technical, and you've always trusted our expertise, right? Just show up and sign where she tells you to. The arrogance was nauseating. They really thought they could steal $200 million and still make him feel grateful for their help. After hanging up, Gabriel watched Jonathan closely. You have two options: call the police now and try to prove all this in court, risking that they get away on technicalities, or let them hang themselves. Go to the meeting, but not as the victim they expect. Go as the predator they never imagined you could be. Jasmine clapped her hands excitedly, like in a movie. You pretend you're going to sign, but you already know everything. Gabriel smiled for the first time since he had arrived. Exactly. And while they are celebrating prematurely, you turn them in to the police, red-handed with irrefutable evidence. His phone vibrated again. A message from Diana. Hey Jonathan, you're the best boss a girl could ask for. After today, I'm sure our partnership will last forever. The hypocrisy of that message made Jonathan's stomach churn. Diana wasn't just stealing money. She was reveling in the humiliation she had planned for him. They think I'm a sentimental idiot, Jonathan said, putting his phone away. They think my kindness is weakness. Gabriel closed his tablet, his eyes hard. Then it's time to show them that kindness and strategic intelligence can be a deadly combination. Jasmine jumped off the couch, her eyes shining with determination. And I can help. I can hide near the meeting room and record everything on your cell phone. For a moment, Jonathan hesitated. She was a 7-year-old child. But then he remembered how she had risked everything to warn him about the betrayal. All right, he said finally. But Gabriel keeps an eye on you at all times. Gabriel nodded. It will be a pleasure to watch those two discover they've underestimated the wrong people. As they planned the final details, Jonathan felt something he hadn't felt in years, the thrill of the chase. Marcus and Diana had spent 2 years building their perfect trap. What they didn't know was that in a few hours, that same trap would close on them with a force that would destroy not only their plans, but their entire lives. For 15 years, Jonathan had been the trusted partner, the understanding boss, the man who always saw the best in people. Today, they would discover that there is a much more dangerous side to kindness, the one that awakens when patience finally runs out. The meeting was at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, but at 2:05, Marcus and Diana would discover that sometimes the silent lamb they thought they were leading to slaughter had grown sharp fangs. And today, finally, he would use them all. At 2 o'clock sharp, Jonathan entered the Miller Industries conference room as if it were just another normal workday. Marcus and Diana were already there, organizing stacks of documents with the precision of surgeons preparing for an operation. Jonathan. Marcus stood up with a beaming smile, hugging him like a brother. Glad you're here. The Japanese are on their way, and everything is perfect. Diana approached with a leather briefcase and a motherly smile. Boss, you just need to sign where I'm marked with yellow post-its. Trust me, as you always have. Her voice carried that condescending assurance of someone who believes they are dealing with a child. Sure, Jonathan replied calmly. But first, I wanted to show you something interesting I found out last night. Gabriel Torres entered the room carrying a box of files, followed by 2 federal police investigators. Marcus and Diana exchanged quick glances, but kept their smiles. Gabriel? Marcus frowned. I thought you didn't work for us anymore. I do, Gabriel replied dryly. Only now I work for the real owner of the company. Jonathan connected his laptop to the projector in the room. Marcus, Diana, do you remember this conversation? The screen lit up with detailed spreadsheets showing bank transfers, dates, amounts. 5,300,000 embezzled in 2 years. Diana's smile faltered for the first time. Jonathan, what is this? Some kind of joke? Joke. Jonathan clicked to the next screen. Photographs appeared of Marcus entering and leaving offshore banks, signed documents, fake contracts. You created 17 shell companies to launder the money you stole from me. Marcus stood up abruptly, his mask of charm finally slipping. Where did you get this? This information is private. Private? Jonathan laughed softly. Marcus, do you really think I built a $200 million company without learning how to protect my own interests? Diana tried to maintain her composure, but her hands trembled as she held the folder. Jonathan, you're misunderstanding. These transactions have perfectly legal explanations. Gabriel interrupted, handing an envelope to each of the investigators. Here are the recordings of the conversations between the 2 of them planning the fraudulent merger. And he placed a second envelope on the table. And here are the confessions of 3 phantom clients you invented, all ready to testify in court. Marcus's face was red with anger and panic. You can't prove anything. These are just accusations. Jonathan smiled for the first time since he had entered the room. Marcus, do you remember Jasmine? Who the hell is Jasmine? The door opened, and the 7-year-old girl entered, accompanied by a social worker. Her eyes shone with determination as she walked up to the conference table. Hi, Mr. Marcus, as she said in a sweet but firm voice. Remember me? I was hiding under your desk last night when you called Mr. Yamamoto, saying you were going to steal Mr. Jonathan's company. The silence in the room was deafening. Marcus opened and closed his mouth several times, unable to form words. Diana tried one last card, her voice high-pitched with desperation. A child? You're going to believe a street kid over respected professionals? Gabriel pulled out his phone and pressed play. Diana's voice echoed through the room with crystal clarity. Jonathan is a sentimental idiot. The day after tomorrow, he'll have to look for another job, and we'll get everything. That clown will never know what hit him. Marcus's own voice followed on the recording, 15 years pretending to be friends with that imbecile. It'll be worth every second when I see his face when he finds out he's lost everything. Diana collapsed into her chair, her face white as a sheet. Marcus punched the table so hard that the documents flew off. You bastard. You set us up. Jonathan remained calm, his voice low but sharp. I didn't set you up, Marcus. You dug your own grave for 2 years. I just provided the shovels. One of the investigators approached. Marcus Williams and Diana Foster, you're under arrest for embezzlement, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit corporate fraud. As the handcuffs clicked around Marcus's wrists, he shouted, This won't stand. I'll destroy you. Jonathan stood up, adjusting his tie with his usual calm. Marcus, you've already tried to destroy me. The difference is that I'm better at it than you are. Diana cried silently as she was escorted out, but Jonathan felt no pity. He remembered all the time she had smiled in his face while stealing his money. All the affectionate messages as she planned his ruin. Jasmine approached him, tugging lightly on his hand. "Mr. Jonathan, are they really going to jail?" "Yes, Jasmine. For a long time." Gabriel closed his briefcase with satisfaction. "Jonathan, the Japanese cancelled the meeting when they heard about the investigation, but 3 other companies have already called, interested in legitimate partnerships. And my company, stronger than ever without leeches sucking its resources. You'll find out how much it's really worth." As the room emptied, Jonathan looked out the window and saw the police van driving away. For 15 years, he had trusted Marcus blindly. For 10 years, he had treated Diana like family. They had turned his kindness into weakness, his trust into stupidity. Jasmine remained by his side, watching the same scene. "Mr. Jonathan, are you sad?" He looked at the girl who had saved everything he had built in his life. "No, Jasmine. For the first time in years, I'm at peace." "Why?" "Because I've learned that there are people in the world like you. People who do the right thing even when there's nothing in it for them." Outside, Marcus and Diana realized that their arrogance had cost them not only their careers, but their freedom. Inside the room, Jonathan realized that sometimes the greatest gift betrayal can give you is showing you who truly deserves your trust. But one question remained that would change everything. What makes a 7-year-old risk everything to save a stranger? The answer would reveal a connection that even Jonathan could not have imagined. 6 months later, Jonathan was in his new office, much larger than his previous one, watching the city bustle below from the 20th floor. Miller Industries had grown 40% since Marcus and Diana's arrest, finally free of the parasites that had been draining its resources. Gabriel knocked on the door, carrying a briefcase and smiling. "The latest news on our old friends. Marcus, sentenced to 12 years in prison. Diana got 8 years. They lost all their assets. Their homes were confiscated to compensate the company. The law firm that represented them refused to continue the case when they found out they tried to bribe witnesses." Jonathan nodded, feeling a quiet satisfaction, but not vindictive. "And the other victims?" "We found 7 more businessmen they defrauded over the last 5 years. All are suing and recovering their losses. Marcus and Diana created a much bigger scheme than we imagined." Jasmine came running in, back from the private school Jonathan had enrolled her in. Her uniform was spotless, her new backpack on her back, her eyes shining with the same intelligence as always, but now nourished by education and security. "Mr. Jonathan, I got an A on my math test." She waved the paper proudly. "Congratulations, Jasmine. I knew you could do it." Gabriel smiled, watching the interaction. It's still surreal how a 7-year-old saved a $200 million company. "Actually," Jonathan said, sitting down to be at Jasmine's height, "there's something you both need to know. Something I found out a few weeks ago." He pulled out a folder of legal documents. "Jasmine, do you remember your grandmother's name?" "Of course. Josephine Miller." "Why?" Gabriel raised his eyebrows. "Miller, like." Jonathan opened the folder, revealing birth certificates, genealogical documents, old photos. "Josephine Miller was my cousin, my father's brother's daughter, whom the family lost contact with over 30 years ago." The silence in the room was absolute. Jasmine looked from the documents to Jonathan, processing the information. "That means that we're real family," Jonathan said softly. "Your grandmother always talked about you to the social workers, about how smart and brave you were." When I started investigating after that night, all the pieces fell into place. Jasmine threw herself into his arms, tears streaming down her face. I knew it. I knew you were different. Grandma always said that family takes care of family. Gabriel cleared his throat, clearly moved. So when she warned you about the conspiracy, it was family protection instinct, Jonathan finished. She didn't consciously know we were related, but something inside her recognized the connection. 3 months later, the official adoption ceremony was held in the same courthouse where Marcus and Diana had been convicted. Jasmine, now legally Jasmine Miller, wore a light blue dress and held Jonathan's hand tightly. The judge smiled as he signed the final documents. It's rare to see a story that begins with crime and ends with a family reunited. Later, at the celebratory restaurant, Jasmine looked at Jonathan with that seriousness peculiar to children. Mr. Jonathan, Dad, do you think Grandma knew this was going to happen? Jonathan thought about the question, remembering how Jasmine had appeared in his life just when he needed her most. I think your grandmother knew a lot more than we realize, and I think she will be very proud to see how you saved our family. On the first anniversary of Marcus and Diana's arrest, Jonathan received 2 letters in the same week. The first was from Marcus, from prison, a pathetic attempt to apologize and suggest that it had all been a misunderstanding. The second was from Diana, also from prison, blaming Marcus for everything and trying to play the victim. Jonathan tore up both letters without finishing them. They still don't get it, Jasmine said, looking at the pieces of paper in the trash. It's not about forgiving or not forgiving. It's about moving on and being better. The wisdom of that child still surprised Jonathan every day. 5 years later, Miller Industries had become one of the 100 largest technology companies in the country. Jonathan created a scholarship program for vulnerable children, funding education and housing for more than 200 children annually. Jasmine, now 12, was the honorary president of the program, personally choosing the beneficiaries and mentoring other young people who were going through similar difficulties to those she had faced. Do you know what the best day of my life was? Jasmine asked during the program's anniversary dinner. What was it? The day I got in your car and decided to trust you. Because that day, I wasn't just saving your company, I was saving our family. Jonathan smiled, looking at the girl who had become his daughter and his greatest source of pride. Marcus and Diana had tried to destroy everything he had built. But they had inadvertently given him the greatest gift of his life, the chance to discover that family isn't just blood. It's also courage, loyalty, and unconditional love. He had learned that true revenge isn't destroying those who betray you. It's building something so beautiful and powerful that their betrayal becomes nothing more than a footnote in the story of your success. Marcus and Diana tried to steal his company, but ended up giving him much more than they could ever imagine: a daughter, a purpose, and proof that sometimes the universe uses the most unlikely people to give us exactly what we need. If this story of family, justice, and second chances touched your heart, subscribe to Whisper Fable for more stories that prove that true victory isn't about defeating enemies, but about discovering the allies who have always been by our side, just waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves.